November 28, 1931. Francis Haddock, age 41, and Forbes McLeod, age 36, both whom lost their lives to machine gun fire responding to a bank robbery on February 2nd, 1934. Their names are memorialized on the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. I would like to take a moment to recognize our current police department staff who have continued to show up, who in spite of the risks and fears involved are not giving up and continuing to bravely serve the town of Needham. I can't thank you enough for your professionalism and your ability to adapt to a rapidly changing world in which we must continue to serve our community. I commend you for the manner in which you provide public safety services under the most difficult of circumstances. Your actions speak well of you as individuals and collectively as members of this department. As we reflect on the faithful and loyal service of all our departed brothers, we convey a message of gratitude from a grateful community. Bring the assembly to attention.
Okay.
And now a reading of the roll.
Freeze it!
Chief Norman McKenzie. Chief Arthur Bliss. Chief Thomas Welch. Chief Daniel C. Henderson. Chief Louis Roman. Lieutenant John P. O'Neill. Lieutenant Richard Sear. Sergeant Frank Gahan. Sergeant William Knowles. Sergeant Howard Mills. Sergeant Matthew Tosi. Sergeant Frank Duran. Sergeant William H. Duggan. Sergeant Gilbert Sanborn. Sergeant Robert Roman. Sergeant John Brearley. Sergeant Stanley Bielski. Sergeant Guido Samarco. Sergeant James Driggs. Detective Edward Wainwright. Detective Joseph G. O'Brien. Chaplain Francis D. Garrity. Officer Alexander Lyons. Officer Charles Robertson. Officer Forbes McLeod. Officer Frank Haddock. Officer Frank Taylor. Officer J. Albert Johnson. Officer Emerson Lambert. Officer Bernard Ridgewagon. Officer Philip O'Hanley. Officer John Krawicki. Officer Henry Longley. Officer Thomas Bruni. Officer Lincoln E. Grasso. Officer John F. Kelly. Officer Kenneth J. McCullough. Officer Herbert A. Flint. Officer Andrew G. Carson. Officer Clarence Garland. Officer Richard Sharp. Officer Joseph Saviano. Officer William English. Officer Kevin Bolio. Officer James McDonough. Officer David F. Eldridge Jr. Officer Stanley Duvall. Officer Richard Rolante. Officer Francis Manning. Officer William H. Harrison. Officer William P. Matthews. Officer Robert E. Driggs.
Order!
Thank you. That concludes our service here today.
Yeah, fall out.